When you stop judging your emotions as bad, you also free up energy to actually deal with what's causing them. So the next time you feel that I never have enough thought creeping in, pause, notice the tension, call it what it is, and remind yourself that feeling anxious doesn't mean that anything's wrong with you. It just means you're a human with a full life, learning new ways to handle it all. Welcome to the Choose Better Thoughts podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Doyle, certified life and leadership coach, and I'm here to help you make your complex life feel easy. Every episode, we tackle one subconscious limiting belief. You will leave this space having shifted your mindset to level up your career, embrace a Zen-like style of parenting, and finally savor the life you've worked so hard to create. So pop in your earbuds and let's do some coaching. Let's jump right into a thought that pretty much everyone has wrestled with. I never have enough time. Does this sound familiar? Believe me, I get it. Between full-time jobs, after-school pickups, family activities, and trying to squeeze in a workout or two, it feels like you're always rushing. And we have tons of proof that life is crazy busy. Just take one look at your calendar. But if you often catch yourself feeling anxious or stressed or guilty for not checking all of the boxes, then that is your brain waving a big red flag that I never have enough time is actually running the show. It's super easy to get caught up in a frantic cycle, jumping from one task to the next or barely finishing anything and feeling more behind. Trust me, I have been there too. Mornings used to be utter chaos in my house. We would be looking for missing shoes, trying to brush teeth, trying to find library books, and I would be internally super anxious that we were going to be late for school. My inner voice was practically shouting, "We are doomed." I think this stems from some perfectionist tendencies I have around respecting school authority figures, but I digress. In reality, we usually make it just in time. I now know that my stress wasn't actually coming from the ticking clock. It was coming from me repeating, "I have zero time," over and over in my head, and repeating, "We're going to be late," over and over to my family. Sometimes our minds love slamming that panic button, even when we don't need to. The truth is, we can't magically create more hours in the day. Oh, how I wish I could. I am not here to claim that you're not busy, because you are. But I do know there is a way to juggle all of our responsibilities with more ease, less guilt, and way less anxiety. So, in this episode, we're going to tackle that alarmist, not enough time mindset. I will share 4 practical strategies designed especially for ambitious, hardworking moms to finally break free of the guilt-ridden cycle of trying to do it all at once. Ready to get started? Let's do this. Let's talk about the first major step. Realizing that I never have enough time is just a belief, nothing more than words running around in our heads. Once you notice that, you can give yourself a little space from the idea instead of treating it like an absolute fact. Here is the trick. Figure out the difference between what's literally happening, say you have 4 deadlines in the same week, and the story you're adding to it, which is, "I'll never get this all done." It might sound like a small tweak, but it changes everything. The stressful part isn't really the deadlines themselves, even though your brain thinks that's the problem. It's actually you telling yourself over and over that you don't have enough time. So let's get more concrete. Imagine you actually have 4 deadlines this week. No drama. But the moment you tack on, "I never have enough time," a wave of overwhelm hits. And this feeling directly impacts how you show up for work. You might start subconsciously hopping between tasks or even procrastinating because you feel so behind. Either way, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You end up actually proving to yourself that you really can't handle it all. And by the way, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you if you do this. I do it all the time. This is how the brain is wired to work. It always finds a way to be right, whether that is helpful to you or not. It creates evidence in your life to confirm what you're believing, whether you're aware of it or not. So the next time you hear yourself internally repeating, I never have enough time, try to call it out. Oh, hey, that's just my brain talking again. Separate yourself from your primal brain. The moment you do that, you are more in the driver's seat. You can choose if that belief stays in your life. Another cool strategy is noticing and calling out the fallout from the sneaky thought. If it always makes you feel frazzled or guilty, maybe it's time to let it go. After all, who wants to live in permanent panic mode? By noticing this and deciding consciously that you'd rather feel calm, organized, and confident, even when faced with tons of deadlines, you're opening up a whole new path and a whole new identity for yourself. So I challenge you now to pause and actually think, how often do you catch yourself saying, I'm running out of time, or I can't handle all of this work? Pick a scenario right now that usually flips you into rush mode. Then, how do you act when that belief takes over? What's the result that you get from those actions? Do you want to keep them? If it puts you in a spin cycle of stress, find yourself an actual moment to pause and ask yourself if you truly want to hold on to the result that it's creating in your life. All right, we've pinpointed I never have enough time. We've clarified that it's an optional sentence in your brain. Now, before you rush to squash that thought or pretend it's not there, let's talk about why it's so important to let yourself feel the full range of your human experience, even the stressful parts. A lot of us, myself included, want to fix a negative thought the minute it pops up. Heck, I named my coaching program Choose Better Thoughts. We think if we just ignore it and reframe right away, we'll make it go away and life will be easier. But being human means sometimes feeling anxious or rushed or guilty. It's not a flaw in your character. It is just part of life. The beauty of this approach is learning how to handle those emotions so they don't derail you. So here's a helpful tip. Start with your feelings in your actual physical body. Often we notice our emotions before we realize the thoughts behind them. I mean, some of you are learning for the first time right now on this podcast, like I learned for myself on another podcast, that your beliefs create the feelings in your body in the first place. If your heart starts racing or your stomach twists, try actually naming what's happening inside of you. I know this sounds silly, but it might sound like this. I'm feeling anxious because my brain is telling me I have zero time. Connect the dots for yourself. This is so simple, so silly, and super effective. You would be amazed how just saying it out loud can lift some of the pressure. Another common response to anxiety is buffering, like scrolling social media, or if you're like me, pouring cup after cup of coffee, or even burying yourself in busy work. Anything to avoid sitting with that uncomfortable feeling. This is all subconscious, by the way. But the thing is, while these quick fixes can be tempting, they don't solve the real issue and can actually keep you stuck in that stressed out mindset longer. Instead, give yourself permission to feel what you're feeling. Say something like, okay, I'm worried. I feel it in my chest, and that's normal. It's not about forcing yourself to be calm right away. It's about acknowledging where you are and letting that be okay. Letting yourself be an actual human being. It's actually super funny that women are often labeled emotional because we are super good at putting on a smile and repressing our true feelings most of the time. So once you allow an emotion to exist without shame, you can think more clearly and potentially find one small action step forward. For instance, if a big deadline is making you tense, remind yourself it's normal to feel nervous. It's not a weakness. It doesn't have to mean anything. It doesn't have to mean you're unprepared or that you need to work differently. It means that you're a human, having a human experience that you're meant to have. Then, from a calmer place of accepting that you're a human, figure out a mini strategy, maybe a 30-minute work sprint followed by a short break or a treat. You can tackle that project without letting your primal brain run the show. Doing work this way becomes so much more enjoyable. When you stop judging your emotions as bad, you also free up energy to actually deal with what's causing them. So the next time you feel that I never have enough thought creeping in, pause, notice the tension, call it what it is, and remind yourself that feeling anxious doesn't mean that anything's wrong with you. It just means you're a human with a full life, learning new ways to handle it all. Okay, so now that you've recognized and allow those stressed out feelings around I never have enough time, let's do a little fact checking. Is it really 100% true you never have enough time? Probably not, of course, but your subconscious brain is stuck there in some areas. So let's get it loosened up a little bit. Look back at your day or your week and see if you can spot and name instances when you actually got so much done. Maybe you sent out emails, you went to the grocery store, you squeezed in a quick chat or 5 quick chats to support your friends. Our brains conveniently forget all of these small wins because they don't confirm the underlying belief that we don't have enough time. Take this specific example. Maybe you assumed you wouldn't have time for your kid's bedtime routine because of a late meeting. If your brain is buying into the belief that I never have enough time, you might skip story time altogether, or maybe snap at your kid out of frustration, and it has nothing to do with them. You might shame or guilt yourself for a situation when there is nothing worthy of blame. But what if you realize life is busy, sure, but not impossible? Maybe you do a 5-minute read aloud instead of the usual half hour. Yes, maybe it is not the ideal routine you dreamed of, but you're still showing up for your child and yourself, even on a hectic day. We often dismiss these super small but meaningful successes because our brains want to confirm the idea that we can't handle it all. Okay, so let's be clear though, you are probably legitimately juggling a ton of stuff. The point isn't to pretend that life isn't jam-packed. I don't want you to gaslight yourself. It's simply to notice that I never have enough time might be stealing what energy you do have and need. If you can point to just 1 or 2 examples where you did make time, even in the middle of chaos, you start poking holes in that belief and actually rewiring your brain. Analyzing your experience like this helps break down the old story and gives you a bit of breathing room. Maybe a more accurate thought is like, some days are crazy, but I find pockets of time for what matters most. This tiny shift can relieve so much stress and it feels so much better in your body. So try it right now. Recall a moment, maybe last week, when you got something done you initially thought you couldn't fit in. Use that as evidence that I never have enough time story isn't totally airtight. Bit by bit, you'll loosen its grip, and you might even be surprised at how much more calmly and efficiently you can tackle the busy parts of life without even having to make a plan and try. All right, let's continue. Now that you've allowed your feelings and noticed that I never have enough time isn't completely ironclad, and you found some evidence to poke holes in it, let's talk about shaping a new perspective, one that actually works for what you want to get done in your real life. This is where bridge thoughts come in. Instead of trying to convince yourself that you suddenly have all the time in the world, Reach for something more believable to your brain, like I'm learning to focus on what matters most, or I can figure out how to make room for my top priorities. These statements feel more natural for your brain to get on board with. If you don't actually subconsciously believe a thought a little bit, it won't fuel your actions effortlessly like I'm talking about. But if you do, as you practice a new belief that you do believe a little bit, notice how your energy shifts naturally. Maybe you'll feel a little bit calmer or a little more hopeful. And that's exactly what we want. We want relief. From that less stressed headspace, you'll be more inclined to do small, purposeful things to support your new mindset. Remember, your brain likes to be correct. It is looking for opportunities to confirm what you already believe. For example, if you're telling yourself, I'm learning to focus on what matters most, you'll feel better about choosing a few core tasks instead of feeling like you have to tackle all 20 items on your to-do list at once. And then over time, these choices reinforce your new thought. You really can do what's essential without burning out. Now, I will be honest, moving from overwhelm to greater ease is a big shift, especially if you're used to living in go, go, go mode. Many of us have been living this way for decades, but you don't have to force yourself to love every moment or pretend you're never busy. It's more about gently guiding your thoughts so that you can make conscious decisions bit by bit. So, what bridge thought can you adopt this week? Maybe something like, I'm figuring out how to prioritize what really counts, or I have enough time for what matters most to me. Write it down or repeat it to yourself whenever that old story or feeling starts to creep back in. Trust me, even a tiny, tiny mental shift can go a long way freeing up your time and energy. And I hope you're making that shift right now simply by listening. All right, you've done a lot of inner work here, spotting the old belief, letting yourself feel the stress, analyzing how true it really is, and finding a bridge thought that feels better. Now it's time to lock it in with a small action step. What is one situation that you can experiment this week? Maybe a nagging task at work, a chore you keep putting off, or that meal prepping project that you keep procrastinating on? That is mine. Whatever it is, choose a tangible tweak that lines up with your new perspective, like setting aside 20 minutes of quiet time for that task, or reorganizing a meeting to a time that suits you better. This is where your new belief leaves your head and shows up in your life. Instead of saying, I'll never get the kids to bed by 8, try starting bedtime 15 minutes earlier for a short and sweet tuck-in. If you think you can't fit in a workout, schedule a quick 10-minute walk and see how it feels. Each small success proves to your brain that you do have time for what matters most. Okay, wow. Seriously, look at all the ground you've covered in just one episode. You identified your belief, I never have enough time, explored how it affects your emotions and actions, letting yourself be human, poked holes in its truth, replaced it with something that's more helpful, and now you're ready to take an action that cements it into your day-to-day routine so that you can practice. That is huge progress, and I want you to celebrate it. Take a second to notice any shifts that have popped up already. Maybe you're catching yourself mid-panic, or easing up on the guilt trips, or actively blocking off a little time for that chore you've been avoiding. Even the smallest step is proof that you are in the driver's seat, not the old stress spiral. And if you want to go deeper, I have got you covered. In my coaching program, we take these exact tools, self-awareness, emotional allowance, fresh perspectives, and aligned action, and we tailor them to your unique life. It's so much more than time management. It's about designing a life that aligns with your priorities and leaves room for what really fulfills you. Right now, I'd love for you to pause and remember one more time, what's the next tiny thing I can do to keep this progress rolling? Maybe it's locking in that 10-minute walk or actually writing down tomorrow's bedtime plan so you remember to stick to it. Whatever it is, go for it. You've got this. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Choose Better Thoughts podcast. If you found these ideas helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who is also craving more confidence, connection, and calm. For more free resources and a deeper dive into my step-by-step formula for making your complex life feel easy, head over to my website at choosebetterthoughts.com. Until next time, remember that you're already there, already enough, and your goals are as good as done. You've